Hey, what's up, everyone? It's Jenny Dildine, the LDS Mission Coach, and you are listening to the LDS Mission Podcast, episode number 163, Rewrite Your Script. I'm Jenny, the LDS Mission Coach, and whether you are preparing to serve a mission, currently serving, a returned missionary, or a missionary mama like me, I created this podcast just for you. Are you searching for epic confidence, ready to love yourself and to learn the how of doing hard things? Then let's go. I will help you step powerfully into your potential and never question your purpose again. It's time to embrace yourself, embrace your mission, embrace your life, and embrace what's next. Hey everyone. Welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here. I created this episode today based on a Tuesday tidbit email that I sent out a few weeks ago. And I really don't batch those weekly emails because I truly try to stay present when I'm writing those. I'll usually write them on the Tuesday that I send them out, and I try to just kind of go into my mind and heart and be like, what would people involved in the mission experience, what do I feel like they would want to hear today? And this kind of came out of that email. And then I decided, you know what? I really like this concept, and I think I should share it on the podcast because I think it's a really good one, and one that has been useful for me, and one that I've seen become really useful for my clients as well. And so I'm hoping that it will help you here today. And it's this idea of rewriting your script. And this could be like a whole podcast episode or a whole nother TV movie. Also, this experience that I had with my husband when we graduated from BYU, we moved to Southern California, and my husband worked for this company, and it was really dreamy. And we lived in Thousand Oaks, California, if you know where that is. And my husband worked building multi-million dollars in Beverly Hills. So imagine being 22, 23, 24 years old, and then moving to Beverly Hills and building multi-million dollar mansions. I think the first house that my husband built was 32,000 square feet. So to put that in perspective, the master bedroom, the primary bedroom alone was 3,200 square feet. So he graduated in construction management. And it was just like a dreamy time. One of my kids was actually born at the hospital there in Thousand Oaks, my second son. We had a lot of amazing friends, amazing family. But as we worked there a couple years, stuff started happening with the company. We got a couple of paychecks in cash there. And then we found out that some other stuff was going down. And then we actually found out that the owners, a couple of the owners had forged our signatures on buying a bunch of properties in Beverly Hills, which we actually didn't own. And they'd done this to a number of different people. Anyway, so it ended up that me and my husband personally, because we were party to this lawsuit, which, for $90 million from Lehman Brothers Bank. So that sounds crazy, right? I mean, and I could tell you more stories about like police raids on the office building where my husband worked. He wasn't working there at the time, but all of this, of course, was going on unbeknownst to us. And then we just randomly found out about it once we were served papers. And then we actually hired a handwriting specialist and stuff to like prove that we actually weren't involved. Anyway, so it was this whole thing. And then a couple years later, after we moved to Idaho, my husband had to go back and testify to what these people had done and the money that they had kind of confiscated and stolen. And anyway, it was this whole kind of crazy thing that happened. I will say that it was during that time where I feel like I had my first panic attack. There was all these new emotions that I'd never experienced before of fear. And when something sort of big and traumatic happens like that, your brain and your body just don't know what to make of it. And I remember I called my mom, and I had these two little boys, and I was like, Mom, I can't breathe. Mom, I can't breathe. And she's like, put the kids in the stroller, take them outside, take them on a walk. Go, can you get outside? Can you get outside? And she was helping me walk through that and breathe through that and process that emotion. I don't know if she knew that's what she was doing, but now I can see that's what she was doing, is just helping me anyway work through that specific situation. It was really hard and really scary. We kind of fled California, came to Boise, and life's been pretty darn good ever since then. But think of that. Many of you are that age right now that are listening to this and going through that at that time. I didn't know. It felt like maybe life was over. Like, how are we going to get through this? It was a really tough time. There were so many twists and turns with that story plot that it could have been a movie. It could have been a manuscript for a movie. And so that's just a few of the bullet points from that story. But the point is I know that I've gone through that. And even some of the people that I'm super close to and really close friends with, when I tell them that story, they're like, what happened to you? Because it's almost unbelievable. We saw it on the news and things like that. Anyway, it was so crazy. And so it really could be a movie plot. But what it taught me, and one of the things that I have learned, is that everybody has a story. Everybody has a past. Everybody has something that they've been through or something they've experienced that is uniquely their experience that you probably haven't experienced before. And one of the things, as I've worked with clients over the last little while, is I've started to notice, especially let's say missionaries who come home early or earlier than they were planning, is that the way that we emerge from a story and from an experience is directly related to how we tell the story. So you notice when I tell this story, I can sort of laugh about it. I can see how my husband and I were so strong through all of it. And even though I had like moments that were really challenging, I see us as the heroes in that story. I see us as someone who came through something strong, who were able to fight against all odds to come out on top. And now that in retrospect, it was so obvious that we hadn't done what they said we had done. I mean, obviously, we were basically poor college students. There's no way we could have bought these multi-million-dollar houses. And so, but at the time, when you're in the middle of it, it feels so heavy and true. And it felt like all the odds were against us. So do you have moments like that where you feel like all the odds are against you? And then you come out the other side. And how do you tell that story? Do you tell that story like that story or that experience that you had ruined you? Do you tell the story like, oh, that is where my whole life started to take a downward turn? Because I've talked to missionaries like this, where they say things like, the mission ruined me. And I dare say that there are some experiences that are really hard to come through. And not that we should think positively about all of it. I'm not suggesting that. But I am suggesting that once you've healed, once you've made peace with it, once you can see how you came out courageous and triumphant, you can paint yourself as the hero in your story. instead of just being at the mercy of your life. And this can be a really healing process, and it can also help you totally empower yourself then to move forward and create new stories and new experiences in the future. So let me give you an example besides this one of our story with our Beverly Hills employment. But so I have a son on the spectrum, and I think I've mentioned it several times on here, is there was a time where it was really hard to just be his mom, especially like the toddler elementary school ages, because when a lot of, kids his age weren't throwing tantrums anymore, he was still throwing tantrums and getting really upset about a lot of things and saying some not very nice things, right, to me. And I mostly tried not to take it personally, but it was just the experience that I was having. And I did have many times where I felt sorry for myself and where I felt like it wasn't fair and I felt like I shouldn't have to go through this, and where I felt like the experience that I was having, this dynamic was quote unquote ruining me as a person, right? I told myself stories like I'm basically in a verbally abusive situation with my second grader. Now, I think there's a place for that. I think there's a place to say things are hard. Things are challenging. Things that shouldn't happen in the world happen sometimes. But I've since been able to take ownership back and see how I was actually the hero in that story. And for some reason, it's making me a little bit emotional just thinking about like how I continued to show up for him, even though it was really, really hard. And so I no longer look at myself and my story as I'm the victim to something, but instead that I came out on top, that I fought against all odds, and he's doing amazingly well right now. And I don't know that that's everybody's exact story, so I don't pretend that it always works out well, but I have been able to rewrite my script for what that story looked like. And no longer do I look at myself as a victim or someone who just was dealt a poor hand. I look at myself as a person who triumphed and who was the hero in a story where I had a son with special needs. I also have a story of when my daughter, the one that's going to be a senior this year, she was about 4 months old, and we figured out that she needed to have a major surgery on her skull, several blood transfusions. I think I've kind of mentioned it here on the podcast maybe before. I think I've shared this story with you before. She's my first daughter that I had after 3 boys, and she had a really intense surgery that really affected me emotionally. And I remember crying myself to sleep at night, worrying about this surgery and about what was going to happen to her and if it was going to turn out okay. And fast forward to the end of the script, the end of the manuscript is she turned out fine, right? She's doing great and it all worked out. And I, again, don't pretend that that's how it works out for everybody, but I have changed the way that I see myself or my role or my part in that story. And I think originally I did feel kind of like a victim. Like this is just happening and it's not fair and I don't understand it. And why does this have to happen to me? And felt at the mercy of the experiences that I was having in my life. And now I really can look back and say to myself, I was amazing through that. I mean, I think of myself back in the intensive care after she came out of her surgery, which was like 7.5 hours. She was just a little tiny little baby. and she had like 8 blood transfusions. It was really intense, skull grafts and all kinds of things. It was intense. And she came out with a gauze around her head and like a shunt or a stint. I'm probably saying the wrong word if you're a medical person, but like out of the back of her skull or her head so that the fluid could drain. Anyway, it was a whole thing. And in the middle of it, it was so stinking hard. And I remember being in the intensive care, and like her oxygen levels would go down, and then the intensive care, like respiratory people would come in and like help her start breathing better again, and all the alarms would go off. And I just remember like I was so weak in that moment. I felt so powerless. I felt so scared and alone. And I think it was one of the most poignant like prayers probably I've ever had in my entire life, for Heavenly Father to give me strength in that moment. But now I can look back on it and see how I was the hero in that story. I stayed with her all night. I stayed with her and sang Twinkle Little Star in her ear, even when she was whimpering because she was in so much pain. And so this is another situation where I've rewritten the script. Instead of telling myself like I should have done better, I should have showed up better, I could have done this better, I should have been a better person, I should have been stronger, I look at it and I say, no, I was strong. I did have courage, even though I've had panic attacks, and even though I had breakdowns, and even though I've had moments where I felt as weak as I could possibly feel. I tell this story like I'm the hero, the one who's overcome all the odds. And so my question to you is, do you have something from your past? I mean, it could be recent past. It could be last week. Maybe you're on the mission and you invited 4 people to church and then no one came. It can be something as simple as that. Do you look at that past and think, oh, we're just in a hard area. Like this is, I'm the worst. This is my fault. I must not be strong enough or spiritual enough or capable enough? Or do you paint yourself as the hero? Oh my gosh, I don't know why I'm so emotional right now, but to me, you are a hero. Just the fact that you decided to go out at all. You're a hero. And so you can rewrite your script of what you thought you were and paint it in a picture that makes you feel like you are the one that emerged from the story on top. And then you took that little setback, whatever it is, and you came out on top. Because the truth is, you guys, is life hands you stuff that's hard, that's heart-wrenching, that's heartbreaking. And the way that we can heal and move through those things and help them kind of become for our good is when we tell the story like it's changed us and we came out the better for it. Now, I want to really be clear that this is not like a Pollyanna sort of situation where I'm just going to think, well, what did I learn from that? And everything's going to be fine. And I just need to look on the bright side. That is not what I'm talking about at all. But if you use a past story, something from before your mission or something from on your mission, maybe you're a return missionary. If you're using a past story to beat yourself up and to put yourself at the mercy of the story, it's going to be hard for you to heal and move on. So, rewrite your script. The other thing I've discovered after working with many, many clients, and I wish I would have understood this sooner, is I love the work that we do here in helping missionaries empower themselves and return missionaries empower themselves to create the missions and the futures that they want. And I wish that I would have understood a long time ago that sometimes there is a period in a person's healing process where it's useful to see yourself as the victim. It's part of a healing process to not take ownership sometimes and to say, my mission ruined me. I think that that's okay. I think it's okay to say high school ruined me, right? Or those kids that bullied me ruined me. I think there is a place for that and a healing thing that can start that healing process occurring. But as soon as you're done with that, and you'll kind of know within yourself, like, I'm ready to let go of that. I'm ready to feel empowered for myself and to empower myself to create something different, because so long as we're the victim in our lives, right, or the victim on our mission or whatever it is, so long as we're the victim, we continue showing our brain that it's the stuff outside of us that makes our life. But you are the one that creates your life. And so once you've been through that healing, like, victim-y stage, which is totally fine, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that, and I do think it's an important part of the process of rewriting your script. But when you're ready, you can change the way you tell that story. I recently talked to a missionary. I only ended up having a couple sessions with him, but he was just finding himself kind of in this downward spiral on the mission. And he decided to come home. And, there's a lot of ways that a lot of people are going to tell that story. But what's the most important thing is how he tells that story. And what I said to him is, I said, I think we need to acknowledge the courage that it takes to decide to do something different. And this is not going to be the right choice for everyone, right? But for him, it did feel like the choice that he needed to make. And he can decide, like, because I'm coming home earlier than I expected, I'm ruined, I don't have any worth or value anymore, I was too weak, I was not competent, I was not capable, I was not strong, right? Or he was so strong. I often find that missionaries who come home earlier than they were planning, it takes so much more strength and so much more conviction and so much more heart-centered growth and stretching and soul stretching than if everything just goes wonderfully well on your mission and you never have a struggle. So if you're home earlier than you expected, earlier than you were planning, see if you can rewrite your script. And sure, there might be a time where you want to think, oh, this was because of this companion, or this was because of this certain thing that happened that I needed to come home early. And I fully acknowledge that stuff happens in life that isn't fair, that isn't right, that we are victims at times. But when you're ready, once you're done with that, you can also rewrite your script. What was your actual role? How did you come out the hero? You can own your greatness, your courage, your perseverance. You can honor, instead of beating up past you, honor past you. Instead of saying, I didn't do it right, I wasn't strong enough, I wasn't capable enough. Honor your fortitude and strength, because the person that you were back then, you wouldn't be them today if you hadn't gone through what you'd gone through then. And I think we can find example after example after example of this in the world, of people who've gone through hard things, who were victims. And then they used that, they healed, they moved through it, they rewrote their story, and then show up and create the life they want. And in turn, actually end up helping a lot of people on their journeys. Because you couldn't have gotten here without you being extraordinary there. I was talking to a sister missionary she's returned now, and she was having a little bit of a struggle towards the end of her mission. And we were on our session and she was like, I just want to put that behind me. I just want to move on from that because that was hard and I don't want to look at it anymore. And I asked her, I said, is that even possible? And yes, tough things where wrong things happen or bad things happen. Yes, you can heal. You can move past them. You can move forward and create something different. But the experiences that we have change us. They really do. They change us. They change who we are. And the experiences that I've shared with you today, I think you can tell from the emotion that I'm sharing with you today and that you can sense from me have changed me. And so maybe there is no such thing as moving past something. There's learning to integrate experiences we've had. There's learning to heal from experiences we've had. There's learning to retell the story in a way that is empowering to you, where you become the hero, where you become the legend, the epic person that came through that. So I've been consistently and pretty much constantly listening to Taylor Swift's new album, The Tortured Poets Department. And this song, The Manuscript, I think is one of my favorite songs on the album, the anthology. And there's some parts you probably will agree with and some parts you probably won't agree with, but and you may or may not like Taylor Swift, but I do think she's an excellent writer. And at the end of the song called The Manuscript, she said, and at last, I know what the agony had been for. The only thing that's left is the manuscript, one last souvenir from my trip to your shores. Now and then I reread the manuscript, but the story isn't mine anymore. And I think that the story isn't mine anymore has a double meaning, at least the way I see it, is basically now she's sharing her story with the world, which a lot of people do when they've been through something hard. And you've assimilated that experience and you can share and relate to other people in that way. But the story isn't mine anymore also means that she doesn't see the story the same way. It's a different story. It's a different story that she can see from the outside and see how it changed her and then be able to heal and let it go. Most often, the most heroic, courageous thing that you can do is to just keep going and keep growing. And the things of your past, that can be true for you. The story doesn't have to be yours anymore. You can share it with other people, but also the story of you being sort of the victim or the one that did it wrong or the one that was weak or the one that faltered in some way, you can make that a different story because you are a different person now. And that version of you, it doesn't have to be the way you tell your story anymore. Because remember, you couldn't be, as one more reminder, you couldn't be who you are today without the experiences you had then. So be grateful to past you, honor past you, rewrite your story if there's something that is still holding you back from your past, and start telling the story like you are the hero, like you're the one that overcame all odds and came out on top. Okay? All right. I hope this has helped you and sending you so much love. Thanks for bearing with me today with a little bit of emotion, sharing some of my personal stories, and we'll just talk to you next time. Sending you so much love. Serving a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints can present a unique set of challenges. And many of those challenges you might not even see coming. So you're going to want a unique set of solutions. It's easier than you think to overcome worry and anxiety, serve the successful mission you've always dreamed of, and navigate your post-mission experience with confidence. That is why I created some amazing free goodies that I'm sharing in my show notes. Maybe you'll want to grab the free training for preparing missionaries, my video course for RMs, or maybe you and I should hop on a free strategy call. If you're ready to take your preparedness to serve or your preparedness to come home to the next level, then go grab one of those freebies. And in the meantime, no matter which part of the mission experience you are involved in, just know that Jenny, the LDS mission coach, is thinking about you every single day.